Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we try to take a complex stack of sources and, well, distill them into some actionable clarity for you.
And today we are wrestling with a really powerful, maybe even a bit of a controversial idea.
Yeah, we're talking about purpose-driven leadership. And this isn't just about, corporate values on a poster. This framework argues that if your influence isn't rooted in a kind of spiritual clarity, it's going to be fragile.
That's it exactly. I mean, the sources we're looking at are making a very high stakes claim here. They're saying the biggest barrier to real lasting influence isn't a bad strategy or not enough money. It's a misaligned why. And in this digital world we're in where, trust is so fragile and attention costs a fortune, people can sniff out that surface level stuff instantly.
I think that hits home for anyone trying to lead something today. We've all seen those leaders who are, they're loud, they're everywhere, but then a year later, their impact has just faded. So these sources, they're putting forward a new metric. It's about shifting the question from how can I grow faster to something much, much deeper.
Something like, how can my leadership actually reflect what matters?
Exactly. The idea is that the leaders who endure are the clearest, not always the loudest.
Which brings us right to the foundation of this whole deep dive. The material lays out this core framework that's built on the alignment of three pillars. Think of it like a tripod.
Okay.
You've got purpose, which is your why. You have identity, who you are. And then influence, which is how you lead other people.
And our mission today is to unpack how getting that alignment right can turn that internal conviction into real-world lasting impact.
So let's start with purpose. The why.
Yeah, and I really appreciate how the source material makes this practical right away. It's not just this big floaty idea. It defines purpose as having a dual function.
A filter and a compass. It's such an indispensable model, especially for leaders who are just overwhelmed with opportunities. So think of the filter first. It's what gives you the power to say no.
Even to good things.
Especially to good things. To say no to those lucrative opportunities that, they might be profitable, but they'd pull you away from your actual calling.
So like if your whole purpose is about deep personal mentorship.
Yeah, exactly. Your filter lets you turn down that massive impersonal consulting gig, even if the money is incredible. That no becomes an act of leadership.
That makes so much sense. And then the compass side of it guides the yeses, the decisions you do make. And we're talking about very tangible day-to-day strategic stuff here.
Oh, absolutely. The compass shapes everything. Are we building a product that genuinely serves people or just one that's designed to maximize clicks? How do we set our prices?
How do you design a customer experience?
Yes. The sources are really insistent on this. A purpose-driven leader treats customers as people, not just, conversion metrics in a sales funnel.
So when it's all working, when purpose, identity, and influence are all in sync, the material says that leadership, and even marketing, it stops feeling like this kind of anxious persuasion.
It becomes more of an invitation.
An authentic call to join a shared mission. You're not trying to convince people anymore. You're inviting them along for the ride.
That's the ideal state. But the sources are also quick with a warning, which I think is really important to mention. Misalignment has a cost.
A big one.
A very big one. They say purpose without strategy produces passion without progress. You can be on fire for your why, but if you can't execute, you just burn out.
And the flip side of that coin, influence without integrity, that produces short-lived authority. We see that in the headlines all the time, don't we?
Constantly. Competence gets you the platform, but if your character breaks down, if it gets disconnected from that core purpose, that authority is just gone in a flash. You need all three to make it sustainable.
Okay, so that clarity on purpose leads us right into that second really foundational pillar, identity.
It does. And this framework sees leadership as starting not with, ambition or a business plan, but with internal discovery, with discovering God's calling for you.
It defines leadership as a sacred trust that's rooted in alignment, not in, say, worldly success.
Which is where we hit the real theological core of these sources. They really push back against this idea that you just manufacture your own purpose.
Instead, it's something you receive.
It's received. They lean hard on scripture for this, quoting Ephesians 2.0. We are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand.
Which suggests the work is already there, waiting. Your job is to find it.
And that one verse, it really helps distinguish between the two dimensions of calling every leader has to get right. First, there's the universal call.
Love God, love your neighbor. That applies to everyone.
Right, it's fixed. And then there's the unique call. That's your specific assignment, how you steward your particular gifts and resources in your context. The danger is when you mix those two up.
But wait, how does a leader actually keep that straight in the messy reality of running a business? You know, it's a tough quarter. The board is breathing down your neck. It feels incredibly easy to let performance metrics define your identity.
And that is the absolute critical tension. The sources hammer this home. You have to root your identity in something secure, something outside of your output. Your identity has to stand over your performance.
Because when you let your worth get tied to reviews or revenue numbers,
You develop what they call a performance-based identity, and it's constantly unstable. You're on a roller coaster.
so what are the warning signs? What should you be looking out for in yourself or maybe in your team?
Well, the symptoms are pretty clear. Role confusion, a chronic case of imposter syndrome, and often this kind of performance addiction. You're just chasing the next win to feel like you belong.
And the fix?
The fix, they argue, is to replace that fear with the declarations based on your identity in God. They tell this powerful story about a CEO named Daniel. He was basically paralyzed by the fear of failure. And he had this breakthrough where he realized his real identity was in being beloved, not being impressive.
Wow. That's a huge mental shift.
It is, because he said that realization made the weight of leadership feel lighter. It freed him up. He could take strategic risks because if the project failed, he hadn't failed as a person. His self-worth wasn't on the line anymore.
Okay, so we've got the why, that's purpose, and the who, which is identity. Now let's get into the how. How do you translate all this into a measurable strategy? The sources draw a really sharp line between mission and vision.
And getting this distinction right is, it's so crucial for actual planning. Your mission is fixed, it's universal. Think of it as God's overarching redemptive work. It doesn't change from one organization to the next.
So if the mission is something huge like redeem the culture through truth and beauty, that's the fixed eternal goal.
Exactly. But the vision, that's how your organization expresses that mission. Vision is contextual, it's time-bound, it's the practical roadmap that turns the big inspiration into something you can actually execute.
So your vision might be launch a SaaS tool for nonprofits in Southeast Asia by 2028,
Precisely. It makes the spiritual impulse concrete and measurable.
which leads to this tool they offer, the VIV plan. Vision impact values. I think this is where people really need the details.
Okay.
How do you take these big ideas and make them work in a quarterly planning meeting?
The VIB plan is all about disciplined execution. You start with the vision, that 3 to 5 year goal. Then you define the impact.
The measurable change you want to see.
The measurable change, yes. And crucially, you embed your values, the non-negotiables, into every single layer of the plan.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say your vision is to deepen community impact. The impact metric could be dedicate 10% of gross revenue to mission partners. And your value of, say, transparency dictates how you track and communicate that. It ties it all together.
That's super helpful. And what about marketing? The sources talk about mission-driven funnels. What does that actually look like?
I mean, it's basically the strategic application of the golden rule. Instead of just pushing for quick conversions, you prioritize education and service. You're trying to build long-term relationships.
So you're thinking about lifetime value, not just the initial transaction.
You're stewarding the customer relationship, and that brings it all back to influence. It shifts the whole model away from command and control and toward what they call relational authority. You earn trust through consistency and care, not just because of your title.
Okay, so once you have this alignment, you have to ask, how do you measure success? Especially if your purpose is eternal. And this is where the sources distinguish between success and significance.
And this is a real point of friction with the conventional business world, isn't it?
Totally. Success, as they define it, is temporary. It's about reputation, and it mostly benefits a leader. But significance is eternal, it's about legacy, and it benefits others.
Right. And if significance is the goal, you can't just use conventional metrics, which
No.
leads to this idea of the kingdom scorecard.
So instead of just tracking traffic and revenue, you're measuring things like faithfulness, obedience, and fruitfulness.
Exactly.
But wait a minute. Isn't there a risk here of just, spiritualizing bad business practices? If my revenue is down, can I just say, well, we were faithful, so it's a win in God's eyes?
That is a fantastic and crucial question, and the sources see that coming. The Kingdom Scorecard isn't meant to replace conventional metrics. It's a corrective filter you use alongside them.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, faithfulness and obedience tie directly back to your VIV plan. Did we stick to our values? Did we execute the strategy with integrity? And fruitfulness isn't just a feeling, it's the visible, tangible growth that results from that faithfulness, both in your team's culture and your customers' impact.
Yeah, you're tracking both in parallel.
You have to. And the sources show this isn't just about feeling good. They have case studies of businesses that pivoted from just profit chasing to focusing on their stakeholders, their employees, their communities.
And they actually did better.
They experienced deeper market penetration. It turns out that purpose can be a massive competitive advantage. It builds credibility. And that's what sustains you. Leadership built only on gifts, on talent, is what they call combustible. It burns out. Character is what makes it last.
Which flows perfectly into this last section. Multiplication, resilience, and legacy. How does a leader make sure the mission outlives them?
By focusing on the multiplier practice, mentorship. Your personal influence is always going to be limited, but it expands exponentially when you shift from being the main source of influence to being the chief developer of other influencers.
That's that Paul and Timothy model they cite. The mission gets transferred through people who are empowered to then go and teach others.
Exactly. And this whole framework, it also prepares you for setbacks because they are going to happen. The world is noisy and skeptical.
Of course.
But purpose-driven leadership gives you these resilience frameworks. Because your identity, your worth, isn't tied to the outcome of one project, a setback becomes a learning opportunity. It's a turning point, not an ending.
And that all builds toward what they call the spiritual mandate of finishing well. Legacy isn't an accident. It's the intentional transfer of vision and values. It's Moses preparing Joshua.
That's the final act of alignment, isn't it? Ensuring the purpose you received is stewarded by the identity you cultivated, leaving an influence that lasts long after you're gone.
So this whole deep dive really shows that purpose-driven leadership is, it's so much more rigorous than just putting a value statement up on the wall.
Oh, absolutely. It demands this disciplined, practiced alignment across those three pillars: purpose, identity, and influence.
And the real growth here, it happens in the application, right? Not just in listening to this.
100%. The challenge is taking these big ideas and actually embedding them into your daily operations, into your life.
So as you move forward from this deep dive, maybe take a moment to consider your own trajectory. If your leadership continued on its current path for the next decade, would it leave a kingdom impact you can be proud of?
And to build on that, which assumptions about growth or success or influence might you need to release in order to lead in a way that is both, profitable and also spiritually fruitful? I think that's the real work. That's what defines a leader who endures.